Good afternoon, everyone. It's so great to be with you. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Donna Edwards. I am a member of the LCV Board of Directors. I am delighted to join Secretary of Energy Jennifer Granholm, who will be leading the Department of Energy's work to take the United States to 100% clean energy by 2035 and net zero emissions by 2050. After our conversation, Sarah Sheffo, who's LCV's Vice President of Government Affairs, is going to lead us on a panel discussion with founder of Regenesis Community Development Corporation and a member of the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council, Harold Mitchell, and United Steelworkers, Anna Fendley. And they're going to be talking about the critical importance of passing economic recovery legislation that centers on high quality, clean energy jobs and justice. Look, afterwards, we're going to have time for questions throughout the program. So please use the Q&A function on Zoom to submit your questions. We'll be tracking them. But before our main program begins, I want to first thank all of you for all you did to support LCV and to ensure that we could go all in to help defeat the former guy, flip the Senate, and defend the pro-environmental majority in the House. We actually could not be more excited to have this pro-climate action trifecta. It is a trifecta. And now we'll see elections have consequences. And so with a pro-climate action trifecta, we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to make progress on climate change, on racial justice, and on economic inequality. I just want to reflect for a moment that we want to commend the Biden administration, the Harris administration, and its all-star team. As a former member of Congress and current member of the LCV board, I know firsthand LCV influences policy by working directly with leaders like Secretary Granholm in the White House, on Capitol Hill, and in state capitals all across the country to enact and defend policies to combat the climate crisis and to fight for environmental justice. We have relationships with elected officials and trust and value. They trust and value LCV's input. I know that LCV is going to be there every single step of the way. You'll be there every single step of the way to push for the greatest possible progress. And so now, I know you all have been waiting for the real part of the program. I'm delighted to be joined today by Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm, who was sworn in a little over a month ago. And I'd love it if Secretary Granholm could tell us a little bit about what she has planned. Before her nomination as Secretary of Energy, Jennifer Granholm was the first woman elected governor of Michigan. It's how we all came to know her through her 2 terms from 2003 to 2011. And during that time, she worked closely with our state partner, Michigan LCV, on policies to reduce pollution and accelerate clean energy, including establishing the state's renewable energy and energy efficiency standards, investing in battery storage, and promoting environmental justice. I actually can't think of anybody who is so fit for the job at the Department of Energy. Secretary Granholm, we are thrilled to have you with us today. You've been in your role for just over a month, as I said, and I'd love if you could reflect just a little bit about how it's going, what your role is for achieving the Biden-Harris administration vision for just and equitable transition to clean energy. And, share with us a little bit about what it was like to have that first cabinet meeting in person just last week.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Donna, and hello, everybody. And yeah, the cabinet meeting, what an amazing thing to actually see each other in person, which none of us had been able to do. But also, at the end of the cabinet meeting, can I just say, we all stood up and, you see that clip about Donald Trump's cabinet all praising him publicly, blah, 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 blah. President Biden insisted that not happen. And behind closed doors, after the cabinet meeting, when the cabinet meeting ended, because we were so moved by his commitment to the things we care about, not just climate, but jobs and what's happening at the border, all of that. We all stood up spontaneously and just gave him a standing ovation, because we all feel so privileged at this moment to be in this place with this administration and the trifecta, as you say, with a Senate and a House that can actually help us bring our fondest desires across the finish line. So yeah, it was a moment, and I'm looking forward to more of those cabinet meetings so that we can continue to get things done. Thank you for asking. And to the broader group, to underscore what, can I say Donna, or do I have to?
Yeah, Donna's good.
Okay, what she was saying about how LCV is an ally and is a partner. I am not kidding you. I don't know how many phone calls and Zoom calls I've been on with LCV members in trying to plan for this moment, for the American Jobs Project, both in governance and also even in the transition. So this is so important. Your presence, your organizing, your mobilizing for keeping this fight for big climate action alive. So thank you for that. So as you saw last week, you all elected a president who has already laid out the boldest climate agenda in our nation's history, and an historic infrastructure package that'll pave the way, right? And so the administration is taking this whole of government approach to delivering our clean energy future. Everybody has referred to this climate cabinet, but it's so much beyond that. Every single department, from the Department of Defense to the Department of State to obviously the EPA, the usual suspects like the EPA and Interior and Transportation. I mean, everybody, labor, we've all got something to offer, and that's how the administration is looking at it. And this energy secretary is just as impatient as you are about seeing the results. I keep saying my hair is on fire because we only have 948 days, I think it is, as of today in this administration that we are guaranteed. So we got to go, go, go. Less than 4 guaranteed years. So I'm just saying, we are waging a war against the climate crisis. You are enlisted in the battle because you want to see massive historic investments, and that's exactly what we're going to deliver. So it all starts with the battle plan. Let me just say a word about the American Jobs Plan, because as many of you know who have been following this and who've contributed to making it real, at least as a bill or a plan, it's calling for hundreds of billions of dollars in investments that'll fuel our work to get to 100% clean electricity by 2035 and a net zero economy by 2050. So those investments are going to make millions of good paying union jobs and make up for decades of neglect to disadvantaged communities. So it starts with $100 billion to modernize the grid, $174 billion for electric vehicles, $580 billion on research and development, which includes $100 billion on manufacturing, all the clean energy technologies that will make our clean energy future possible. It would also establish, and I know many of you worked hard on this, a new energy efficiency and clean electricity standard. Hopefully we get this across the finish line as well, because it would ensure that we get 100% clean electricity by 2035. I mean, this is what the president means when he says we're going to build back better. It's huge for the work that we are going to do, but it's also frankly huge for the work that we've been doing at the Department of Energy. This coming to this department has been such an eye-opener. I mean, there are just such fantastic people who are committed souls and have been here through the years to make this moment happen. So, you know, DOE, just even since Inauguration Day, we've announced at DOE $500 million for research and development and deployment of the technologies that are being developed in the laboratory. So we're investing in solar and wind and geothermal and electric vehicle technologies and materials that'll make the grid more resilient and reliable. We're going to be going big on beefing up transmission infrastructure, and obviously getting that clean power from the generation places to load centers, obviously. Our to-do list is very long, but the possibilities are endless, and they certainly can deliver the prosperity and the promise that our fellow citizens have been waiting for and so deserve. So I just want to say, what else do you need to bring all of these technologies online? You need millions and millions of jobs, good paying jobs. So when I was governor, I really saw firsthand how the clean energy industry can drive this life-changing job growth. We obviously hit rock bottom when I was governor during the Great Recession with all the bankruptcies in the auto industry and the supply chain and all of that. But in my last year of office, we enjoyed the most improved job creation rate of any state. And why was that? It's because we had a federal government who was a partner in investing in the auto industry and the supply chain and the guts to car 2.0, which is the electric vehicle, the guts of that being the battery for the electric vehicles. So thanks to the Obama-Biden administration, Michigan started growing clean energy jobs by the thousands. It's why we are committed to continue. We've seen it happen, and we know we can do it again with a partner in the federal government, these states. So it's why the president's committed to going big on clean energy investments. He was there when we started this. It's why at DOE we've established a whole new brand new office of clean energy jobs, of jobs. So we're committed to making sure that every funding opportunity that we put out, every grant that we award has the highest possible potential to create good paying union jobs for all kinds of people in all corners of the country. And as we keep jobs front of mind, we're going to make equity our North Star. So equity for people of color who have been locked out from opportunities to start businesses or to find secure, good paying work, equity for tribal nations who have fought for their lands and for their people, equity for the residents of coal and oil and gas towns on the edge of the transition, equity for communities whose children can't inhale a full breath of air because of pollution from nearby smokestacks. We owe a moral debt to those who have borne the brunt of the fossil fuel era, and it is a moral debt because we know they're getting hit first and worst by climate change. But the clean energy economy offers an opportunity to right those historic wrongs, and we're going to seize it. So that American Jobs Plan is going to deliver 40% of the benefits of the clean energy investments into communities that have been left behind and forgotten and unseen. So from the grants we give out to the contracts we write to the teams we built, this is going to be our mission. Because when it comes to this fight, we can't win unless everybody wins. We can't win at all. And we can't win without all of you. So you are the boots on the ground. We need you to keep beating the drums for everybody to hear, starting with support for that American Jobs Plan and President Biden's budget. And you guys have friends on both sides of the aisle. I hope you'll continue to get out into the field and rally the troops and make sure that your representatives know where you stand. Call, write, email, go to town halls, shout it from the rooftops. If 2020 showed us anything, as Donna said, it's that when you need to mobilize, this is the group that can get it done. So our work has only begun. We've never had a better shot. Let's make it happen. Thanks, Donna.
Well, listen, it doesn't end there. This is really great because what you've outlined is a really comprehensive approach to energy that builds equity in throughout and dealing with the problems that we have now, but also looking to the future, which is why I wanted to ask you. I've been surprised in these early days since the American Jobs Plan has been rolled out that there's this attack on the work that's needed to upgrade and make the grid more resilient as not infrastructure. And that is surprising to me because in 1956, interstate highways weren't infrastructure either, but they are now. So I wonder if you could actually speak to the political challenge that we have of getting people to understand what is infrastructure and what falls under the department's purview.
Yeah, it's, well, obviously what falls under our purview are the things related to that transmission grid and electrifying the highways in the sense that that is going to require EVs, electric vehicles that have batteries that need to be charged. Obviously, our whole of government approach is working with the Department of Transportation, and Mayor Pete has the electrification of the highways on his, in his column. But tell me that, it seems to me like electric vehicles also drive on roads, and isn't that part of infrastructure? I don't know anybody who would seriously say that the transmission grid is not infrastructure. And in fact, the Republicans Republicans and Democrats have introduced legislation to upgrade our transmission grid, the infrastructure of that grid. Same thing with like water infrastructure is another piece of it. There's $100 million to upgrade the water systems, including replacing all of the lead pipes. How can we say that this is not infrastructure? Of course it's infrastructure. I will say though, this is called the American Jobs Plan. The vast majority of it is in the bones, the scaffolding that makes us live well in the country, or should live well, right? There are components of it that are policy infrastructure to create jobs in the care economy as well. And I know many have criticized the jobs in that, I guess, as not being part of traditional infrastructure. And I guess if you can't see what beyond roads and bridges as infrastructure, if you don't see broadband as infrastructure, I'm just not sure what is infrastructure. I think that's just it's an attack that doesn't make sense in the 21st century. I would say, the rail, ports, airports, bridges, roads, broadband, transmission, water, all of that is classic infrastructure, whether they want to admit it or not. And those who have been railing on it have introduced bills or have voted to support all of that in the past. So I'm hopeful that we can get beyond this no, 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 and get to the points of yes, 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 because I think there's a lot in there that has a lot of bipartisan support. Honestly, even Donald Trump, before he left office, he was talking about replacing lead pipes and water infrastructure. So this shouldn't be anyway, Democrat and Republican. I would hate to think that the minority in the Senate just wants to stop Joe Biden instead of supporting the people that sent them to Washington.
Well, your lips. I want to ask you about sort of backing up. When the president came in, he issued a number of executive orders, potentially rolling back regulations, really not quite doing that under the Department of Energy, but you're under a review now of many of those Trump era regulations. Can you tell me what's at the top of your priority list?
Yeah, there's a thing called the process rule, which is for me one of the top things, which is, of course, the Trump administration put in place some amendments to the process rule that makes it harder for us to continually upgrade our appliance and efficiency standards. And, I don't quite get why you would want to make it harder for us to have citizens save money on their appliances. If it's, on average, Americans save $320 a year from this continual upgrade of technology. Why would you want to stop innovation by blocking upgrades to technology that will save consumers money? It's curious. I'm not sure I understand it, but that we actually put out a rule today, or a notice today, that we are reevaluating that rule, and we are inviting comments for that to undo that particular piece. I would say too that obviously we are super interested in playing offense and deploying. And historically, this isn't necessarily just a Trump thing, but historically, the Department of Energy has been the place for research and development, which is great. But we also want to be the place for deployment now. So we are creating a whole effort inside the department to deploy. And that's very exciting for the department. It's very exciting for the people who are here, but it's super exciting for us. And a lot of that will involve making sure that technologies that we are researching in the labs are taken out and really put, really tried out. So for example, I'm on the phone a lot with now with my counterparts in other countries, who want to see the U.S. help them with technology related to carbon management and reduction. And one of those technologies is like green hydrogen. And that's a big, expensive piece of technology, but we want to be a place where we do deployment of that technology, or at least we demonstrate the technology in a way that brings down the cost for us as a country, but also for our partners around the world. And in the American Jobs Plan, they've actually got 25 demonstration projects in both CCUS and hydrogen to be able to bring down the cost of these carbon management technologies that not just the US is looking for, but that other countries are. So it's a whole new thrust inside of our department to be able to ensure that we have both robust efficiency standards as well, and you know, encouraging the technology and the innovation associated with that, but also deploying the technology that's being discovered in the labs.
Well, and that's where, you know, the focus on equity can really make a difference, because where you deploy those technologies and how you use that experimentation could really have good, really strong impacts on communities.
Totally, totally true. I mean, you know, we've actually hired, I have in my office now, created an office on equity that is headed by this fantastic woman named Shalonda Baker. And she is helping to guide the White House as well in making sure that the policy pieces will really benefit the communities that have been left behind, so we can fulfill this Justice 40 initiative, 40% of our investments going to communities that have been left behind. And so the technologies, like for example, in buildings, the advanced building technologies and the weatherization programs combined can make sure that we are investing next generation innovation in communities that really need it most. And so making sure we're really strategic about deploying those technologies in places where we know first they need, rather than being the last place we think of, is you know, just really exciting for this administration. I will say, I think so much because Joe Biden is a man of faith and really has such a heart for you know, for people who have been on their knees. And he really wants to see us use the good of government to lift everybody, but particularly those who have been struggling. And that's true in this climate area, and it's true in other areas as well. So I feel honored to be part of it.
It's great. And so I'm a little curious about something that's very personal for me. I live in a building that is only about 10 years old. And when the building came up, there were no electrical charging stations. So nobody in my building can actually buy an electric vehicle and park in our garage. How does the Department of Energy, you know, work with local communities and states to even change planning and zoning guidelines so that we're able to accommodate what the future will be: electric vehicles, charging stations throughout the interstate highway system and in the places that we work and live?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, we need to work on multi-family dwellings. It's easier to, you know, to contemplate it if you have your own garage and you plug in a 3-prong plug in your garage. But often when people are renters, or when they are in buildings that are owned by another, you know, entity, and they're paying, it's a more difficult nut to crack. And so we got a whole team that are working on that. You know, the president has committed to deploying 500,000 charging stations across the country, and that includes in the places that the private sector haven't already jumped into. And that includes in those kinds of places, but also along the highways, clearly, where we've got gaps and range anxiety is created. So that's part of the, you know, part of the initiative. There's whole teams that are working on this, including you know, taking a look at the financing of buildings overall, so that we lift whatever restrictions might exist on those kinds of buildings that would allow for charging stations to be put in. So bottom line is, completely agree. This administration is on it, and we have teams that are looking at it right now.
Wow. You know, I mean, some of it really is just guidance for state and local officials who need the guidance from the federal government to just get it done.
it's guidance, and it might be for some states, you might have to put some carrots or sticks in place to make that happen as well. I love carrots myself, because as a governor, I would always take those carrots and be able to use them to create jobs or whatever it was. And I think in the American Jobs Plan, the President Biden has considered some carrots, but if the carrots don't, there's no stick, then sometimes it's not enough. So I think both have to be managed in the right proportion.
Yeah, I totally agree. And sometimes, those sticks are really, really important. Listen, we have a couple of questions from our audience, and so we're gonna go to those. I think our first question comes from Sam Poole, who's in Florida. And so, Sam, if you're there, go right ahead.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Madam Secretary. How do you think the DOE can double down on your work in clean energy and research innovation? And what is DOE doing to speed the deployment of clean energy and advance energy efficiency?
Yes, this is so much in our wheelhouse. And I was mentioning that we are really exercising the muscle of deployment now, because it's so marvelous to have these great labs and the great research and development that is in there. But it is critical for us to do technology transfer and get the great innovation out of the labs and onto the street. We know the clock is ticking, and DOE is going to continue to innovate, but the deploy part is really high on our list. We have to get hundreds of clean energy gigawatts on the grid. And in addition to using our existing programs and authorities like the Weatherization Assistance Program and the State Energy Program and our loan guarantee programs, we're going to need to pass that American Jobs package to do more to ramp up that clean energy deployment. The package, if it is passed, it includes $100 billion of investment in the electricity grid. So that's critical for deployment, right? It includes tax credits for extension of tax credits for clean energy. It includes clean energy block grants. So some of those carrots we were just talking about. It includes more federal purchasing power for clean energy. So we need to lead by example. The federal government has about $50 billion worth of purchasing every year. And if we are serious about turning over the fleet of federal vehicles for clean vehicles, if we are serious about reducing our own CO2 footprint as a federal government, we need to be purchasing the products that get us there. And that means we could help to create markets across the country for this technology. The American Jobs Project also has a clean energy standard in it, as I mentioned, an energy efficiency standard. And as I said before, that building of more transmission will help to us to integrate, obviously, the renewables that we want to put on the grid. And the American Jobs Plan has a tax credit to support energy storage and transmission, and gives DOE more authority to site these transmission lines. So bottom line is, in order to deploy and get that technology out of the labs, we need to be able to have some of these resources to make that real. So with your help, hopefully, we'll have those tools in place.
Great, thank
Thanks.
you very much, Sam, for your question. If we have time, I think we have one more question from somebody you might recognize, or at least the organization, and it's our state affiliate in Michigan. Ali Al-Qadi is a college student, and she has our next question. Ali, oh, there you are.
Hey, yeah,
Oh,
thank you, Donna.
You're definitely not a she, you're a he.
Hey, it's all good. It's all good. I appreciate the introduction nonetheless. Yeah, just thank you, Donna. And, Secretary Granholm, I just want to say, as a resident of Ypsilanti in Southeast Michigan, thank you so much for your leadership in our state and for your leadership at the Department of Energy. I'm just wondering, in so many places, communities of color are most impacted by fossil fuel pollution and climate change, but they have not reaped as much of the upside benefits of solar and other clean energy investments. How can the administration ensure that clean energy deployment and investment is equitably distributed as we rapidly move forward?
Yeah, this is a great question. Obviously, it goes right into that Justice 40 initiative that the Biden administration, Biden-Harris administration has articulated as a goal. It's important to really, I think, drill down on the barriers and the challenges that are standing in the way of clean energy access, whether it's upfront investment and capital costs or credit and financing, affordability, utility investment patterns, utility behavior. So this is why the American Jobs Package includes policies that address a lot of those. It also invests, I started to mention $111 billion in clean water infrastructure. You in Michigan will appreciate that because we need to finish the job of replacing all of those pipes, lead pipes in Flint. The package invests as well in the low-income housing, and that's why the weatherization and the housing pieces of this are so important. It's why Secretary Marcia Fudge is key on leading this as HUD. And it also invests in community colleges and workforce development, which as well are important for our commitment to environmental justice. So we need to identify the communities that need these investment the most and employ a serious place-based strategy to make sure that those investments and clean energy development flows directly to those communities. And that is part of what the American Jobs Plan is all about. And unfortunately, Donna, I've got to jump. I know you guys have to move on too. I really appreciate the chance to be able to speak to you and to your members. Go LCV, continue to partner with us. Let's bring this home.
Great. Just wanted to say thank you very much for joining us today. I know that you have to go. Appreciate the time that you've spent with us, and our 2 million members are going to be right there with you to make sure we get the most robust plan possible to really deal with the climate and with environmental justice and racial justice. So go and thank you.
All right. Thank you.
We'll be there with you.
All right.
Great. Thank you all so much for sticking with us there. You know, we really appreciate Secretary Granholm and, you know, all that she's done to make sure that we can take on the challenges that we have, you know, right now facing us and the opportunity as well. And now with this part of the program, I'm pleased to introduce, let me scan down here. I am pleased to introduce our friends here from, the second part of our program, a discussion on the importance of clean energy focused on economic recovery legislation that's moderated by Sarah Schiffo, LCV's Vice President of Government Affairs. And she's joined, as I described before, by 2 close partners of LCV, environmental justice leader Harold Mitchell of South Carolina-based Regenesis Community Development Corporation, and Anna Fendley, the United Steelworkers Director of Regulatory and State Policy. Sarah, with that, I'm going to turn it all over to you.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Edwards. We are so lucky to have a passionate leader like Secretary Granholm at the helm of the Department of Energy at this critical moment in our nation's history. As you've heard, since their first days in office, the Biden-Harris administration has embraced a whole of government response to tackling the interwoven crises of the pandemic, climate change, economic inequality, and environmental and racial injustice. Thanks to this administration and the pro-climate leadership of the United States House and Senate, we now have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to make historic progress on climate change through a combination of strong standards, investments, and a focus on justice. This includes justice for the Black, Indigenous, and other communities of color and low-income communities who've borne the brunt of fossil fuel pollution and systemic racism, and justice for the workers and communities who are impacted by the rapid shift we must make from fossil fuels to clean energy. LCV and our state partners are all in to work with this administration and Congress to swiftly pass transformative economic recovery legislation that meets the scale of the crises we face with the big investments that are needed to build back better with climate ambition, clean energy, good jobs, and equity at its core. We're working together more closely than we have ever before with our more than 30 state partners. We are bringing our legislative expertise, our grassroots power and organizing, our relationships with local and national elected officials, our communications and our message research to win this all-important advocacy campaign and to make the recovery benefits real and felt and delivered in communities across the country. Now, I'm happy to share that voters overwhelmingly support this agenda, which has been modeled off of the historic state level progress on clean energy that our state partners have helped drive forward, especially since 2018. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't note that the pandemic has hit our society and our economy hard, and it has hit women and workers of color the hardest. Millions of people are still out of work and many more are underemployed. One of the best chances we have to recover and build a more fair and just society is through creating high quality union jobs in the clean energy sector and in other jobs tackling and addressing the climate crisis. As LCV works to seize this historic opportunity, we're focused on 3 top priorities. First, putting the US on a path to 100% carbon-free energy that's powering our electricity grid, our transportation sector, and our buildings. This includes, as you heard from the Secretary, robust 10-year investments in clean energy tax incentives and other policies to deliver on 100% clean electricity by 2035. It includes electrification of our cars, our buses, and other sources of diesel pollution. It includes building out national charging infrastructure and retrofitting our schools and our homes and workplaces to make them more energy efficient and healthier and safer. Our second top priority is centering justice and equity in this package. Equity and justice for low income and communities of color who've been harmed most by the legacy of toxic pollution. This includes delivering on the 40% of investment benefits flowing to these communities, and benefits must span access to affordable and safe energy, drinking water, transportation, housing, workforce development, cleaning up legacy pollution, urban green space, and so much more. Third, we strongly support high quality, good paying union jobs because we know that the climate crisis and economic inequality are inextricably linked. We're focusing on tying those clean energy tax incentives to the creation of high quality union jobs and domestic procurement so that we can rebuild the American manufacturing base, including by driving investments into deindustrialized communities. Now, it's going to take a powerful movement and partnerships to get this done, and we are deeply committed to working across a broad cross-section of allies that span the climate, labor, and environmental justice movements. We're very grateful to have 2 of those partners with us today in Harold Mitchell and Anna Fendley. As you've already heard, Harold Mitchell is co-founder of the Regenesis Community Development Corporation, has served in the South Carolina State Legislature, and has just been named to the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council. We're going to be learning from the national model he has set in revitalizing his hometown and frontline community of Spartanburg, South Carolina. LCV has gotten to work closely with Harold through the historic collaboration of environmental justice and national organizations, the Equitable and Just National Climate Forum. Anna Fendley is the Director of Regulatory and State Policy at the United Steelworkers, with whom we work very closely through the Blue-Green Alliance. BGA unites 13 of the nation's largest labor unions and environmental organizations, including LCV, to tackle environmental challenges, create and maintain high quality jobs, and create a thriving, clean energy, equitable economy. We'll start with a few opening remarks from Harold and then turn to Anna, and then we'll have time for a few panel questions. With that, Harold, it is my honor to turn it to you.
Thank you, Sarah. And this is why I'm excited and hopeful after hearing from Madam Secretary, because I come from one of these frontline environmental justice communities where we took a $20,000 small grant, turned that into $300 million of community-led redevelopment. Not just remediating Superfund and brownfield sites, but developing, 500 affordable homes, bringing healthcare into the community, the medically underserved community that now we have 9 community health centers, federally qualified health centers, a host of other things that we were able to do through the interagency working group when there wasn't that kind of support and commitment of what we see today. And now we're about to move forward into our building our solar installations and aquaponics facilities around renewable energy. And so this is why I'm hopeful, because of the commitment and the president being serious enough to put community folks at the table with this historic White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council to keep the cabinet honest and accountable for the 40% commitment that he has put forth.
Thank you so much, Harold, for that inspiring story and example of Spartanburg, and for the reminder that accountability is what's going to count, and delivering on this and our commitments to justice, not just in word, but in deed and in follow through. With that, Anna, I'd love to turn over you for some opening remarks as well.
Sure. Thank you so much, Sarah. And I'm so glad to be here with all of you. I'm here on behalf of the United Steelworkers Union. Of course, we're a union that is made up of and represents workers who've decided to organize together in their workplace and collectively bargain with their employer for their wages and benefits and conditions of work. Our union, while we have members across all sectors of the economy, primarily our union is an industrial union made up of workers who make things. So they make steel, aluminum, copper, paper, tires, glass, chemicals, fuels, all kinds of things that we use in our everyday lives. And, you know, Sarah, our union has always cared about the environment, you know, contrary to some stereotypes. You know, our members do want clean air, clean water. They care about climate change. And I think the concern was always about some of the unintended consequences that policies would have that would threaten their jobs, their communities, the livelihoods that their families had built, really a culture. So that was a big reason why our union joined with the Sierra Club back in 2006 and formed the Blue Green Alliance to work on those issues that you talked about before. And we were so glad that LCV decided to join us a few years ago. And because we really believe that you don't have to choose between having and creating good jobs, good union jobs, and doing the right thing on the environmental side, we can do it all. And I think we really have a moment here with the Biden administration, with leaders like Secretary Granholm, to really accomplish all of those shared goals that we have.
Thank you for those powerful remarks, Anna, and I couldn't agree more. This is one of the areas that I'm most excited about having our members learn from, is helping bridge this divide that can often pit good jobs against a healthy economy, and or healthy environment, and we don't have to choose, right? And really understanding the vital role that unions play in helping deliver high quality jobs that provide a path to the middle class and help support and advance worker protections and all of our shared goals. So Harold, I'd love to pose my first question to you. First, let me just celebrate and say congratulations on being named to the first ever White House level Environmental Justice Advisory Council. As we shared earlier, you've been doing this for many decades. I won't tell how many, but I just wanted to say it's so exciting to see this administration really putting environmental justice leaders like you and community-led processes at the center of its policymaking. So we'd hear you reflect a little bit more about what that means, and specifically how clean energy can help address some of the systemic injustices that have existed in communities of color and really help build community wealth in these communities.
Yes, and I think the big key, as you stated before, is accountability, the investment and commitment, and the implementation of these dollars that we see that's being committed to, especially in the Justice 40. It's going to be very important to have folks like myself and other environmental justice leaders at the table, because implementation is going to be key here. We saw that with the ERA dollars during the Obama administration, that it missed over many of the frontline communities. There were talks of trillions of dollars, billions of dollars, but if you don't have the folks at the table that can make sure that it gets into these communities, it's more than just the remediation and the cleanup, as you stated. This is the opportunity in a revolution to rebuild these communities, to build wealth in these communities, and have an opportunity not only to get training in putting solar panels up, but be the manufacturer of those opportunities that we see that's being presented here. So it's really connecting the dots across the board of the commitment, not only in this administration, but what we see on Capitol Hill, to make sure that these dollars get into the agencies to fulfill the commitment that the president has. And so I think we have a moment that we've never had before to be able to implement change in the communities that have so desperately wanted to be at the table throughout history of these impacts that we've seen. And we've seen what COVID, what George Floyd, this whole moment that we've been in 2020. Now to be able to have the type of resources and opportunities and being at the table to kind of guide the agencies and the commitments into these vulnerable communities, you can't articulate that. I mean, it's just a point that we have to connect the dots and make sure that those resources get into those vulnerable communities that have been inundated by these environmental assaults for decades.
Powerfully said, Harold. Thank you. Anna, it was incredibly powerful that the president chose to unveil his American Jobs Plan just last Wednesday at a union hall outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I want to hear a little bit more from you as an industrial union on the fact that manufacturing, and I'll recognize this on our part, has often been overlooked in the development of clean energy policy. I think by LCV, by our members, but more broadly, even by leaders on Capitol Hill. Thankfully, that's changing in no small part due to the United Steelworkers leadership. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what are some of the top policies it's going to take to ensure that the rapid growth of clean energy helps drive the revitalization of domestic manufacturing and that development supports high quality union jobs.
Thanks, Sarah. That's a really great question. And we were also very excited to have President Biden unveil his American Jobs Plan in our home city of Pittsburgh. You know, you've hit on a really important thing with American manufacturing. Of course, the many technologies that we're looking at for the future, from Secretary Granholm talking about electric vehicles to wind and solar, right? These technologies, these things don't just magically appear because we want them to. They're made out of things and put together by working people. And we really need to work through our policies to both retain good manufacturing jobs that already exist in this country and create new ones. And there are a few things that we can do to help do that. One is making sure that we are rebuilding our infrastructure and building new infrastructure with American-made materials. So this is something that our union is very focused on. We just launched a campaign of our own called We Supply America to talk about all those things that our members make that go into the roads, the bridges, the broadband network, the grid, renewable energy technologies, vehicles. So that's the first thing. We need to be buying American when we're making things. The second thing, and Secretary Granholm hit on this a lot, we really need to be investing in R&D, investing in new technologies, and making sure that we are upgrading our nation's manufacturing base to be the state of the art, the best in the world, the cleanest in the world, and employing American workers who make fair wages and have great benefits. And then the third thing I'll just mention briefly is the Protecting the Right to Organize Act, the PRO Act, which is a labor law reform bill that we were so excited that LCV has supported as well in solidarity with the labor movement. But really, this is another critical piece to what we're talking about capturing with the climate benefits and the economic benefits. Workers need to be able to join a union without fear, without retaliation, and the PRO Act is an important piece of making that happen. And all of those things were included in President Biden's American Jobs Plan. So that's really exciting.
It's truly exciting. I'm happy to share for our audience who may not all know, we did endorse and support the PRO Act that Anna just spoke to so powerfully. And we also included it in our National Environmental Scorecard to really make the connection for legislators and Congress about the fact that we cannot have a truly equitable clean energy economy without supporting the rights of workers. Our opponents are the same who are trying to hold down workers and as those that are trying to pollute with abandon and get around the rules. So we're so excited to be supporting this work, not just in solidarity, but as a core part of the work that we do. I'd love to ask you both, my next question is the same one for both of you. And this is really one about sort of reflecting on why you do this work and what inspires you to be in this fight at this moment, critical moment in our efforts to tackle these interrelated crises. Let's start, go back to you, Anna, and then we'll turn to Harold.
Sure. And full disclosure, you know, I knew that you were going to ask this. And so I've tried to do a lot of thinking because this is very, very personal for me, as it is for many people. You know, when I began my career, I really wanted to do work focusing on the pollution of multinational companies. These companies who have so much money and so much power, and whose toxic pollution makes people sick. And the more I learned about that, the more I got into it, the more I understood that there is a direct link between whether a company makes their workers sick through toxic exposures at work and their pollution into the community. And the companies that do both of those things better very often do those things better because they have a union and the workers are there in the facility holding that company accountable. And the more I learned about the power of working people and the ability of working people to band together to make sure that they have a say in their workplace, in their livelihoods, in their wages, the more I was drawn to this work. And I will just say that our membership in the Steelworkers, they inspire me every day because they're really just fighting for their livelihoods, fighting for their communities. And they do very hard jobs that are sometimes very scary too. And so that's why I'm here, really, is to try to help make the world a little bit better for people who just want a roof over their head and want food on the table and want to be able to go to their kids' t-ball game.
And Sarah, I got involved in this work basically out of survival. The sickness that I had, my immediate family, my father, my sister, those that are, you know, my closest of friends in the community that were impacted from these toxic polluting facilities. So that's how I got involved. But being able to organize and address those issues and reverse that to where we could create opportunities for access to healthcare, create opportunities for job training to replace. Once we, you know, were awarded those grants, we wanted to make sure those dollars stayed within the community. So we were able to train folks in the communities to rebuild our communities with the housing, with the infrastructure, with all those things that we just wanted to have an equal shot like everyone else, not only the environmental justice, the social justice, and the economic justice. And this is why I'm hopeful now with this investment, the 40% commitment, that we can see how we can change out these, you know, 100-plus-year-old pipes in the ground, creating jobs there, creating the type of jobs and opportunities that folks didn't even think or imagine. Good living wage jobs, not having to work 3 and 4 jobs just to survive. And so this is where I see this as the greatest opportunity for America. And especially, we know that the other side's going to play games politically, but because of COVID and local governments being strained and lack of resources, we know right now folks are looking for these opportunities that the Biden administration is putting forth. And we just want to make sure that frontline communities are front centered and able to participate in what we're looking at of building back better.
Thank you both for sharing so openly and so directly and so powerfully and so personally with our audience about what brings you this fight and what's at stake here. You know, for me, I've never been more hopeful about our ability to make progress, and that is tied directly to the partnerships that LCV has with each of you, also with how we're defining the challenges that we're solving together. This is not about us dealing with our challenges in isolation, but it's about really working together to connect with everyday people and to build better communities, them having a voice at the table, whether it be community-led revitalization or workers banding together to say, these are the jobs we want, and we're going to band together to make sure that our employers are treating us fairly and that we have access to safe, high-quality jobs and benefits, and that we can go to those t-ball games or soccer games in my case. And Harold, I think just really centering the work that we have to do to address the legacy of toxic pollution and the legacy of systemic racism that have really cut out deliberately far too many communities of color, low-income communities, and tribal communities from the opportunity that is at the center of the American dream and the American promise. So I am so excited to be working with you both in this. We could not have a bigger moment, a bigger opportunity here than working with this narrowest of trifectas in Congress and in working with this whole of government response that we've heard about so powerfully from Secretary Granholm, and that really is being led from the top by President Biden and Vice President Harris. I'd love to turn it back to you if you have any closing comments, advice for us or our members that are listening. First, I'll go back to Anna and then to Harold for any closing comments.
I'll just close by saying thank you for having us. You know, in the labor movement, we know and we believe, and the basis of our existence is that we are stronger together. And I think that that is especially true now across the labor movement, the environmental community, and the environmental justice movement. We're stronger together in our advocacy to reach these goals and to pass a strong plan with the Biden administration. So thank you very much.
Yes, and in closing, Sarah, I just want to thank you for the opportunity that you've created. And I think if we can continue this open dialogue, keep holding one another accountable, keep the lines of communications over and respectful, I think we'll be able to achieve with everything that's put on the table. You know, there's never been a time like we have right now to have this kind of commitment, as I stated before, from the White House, from the Hill, and this broad coalition that we have across the country to address and to build back better, leaving no communities behind.
Thank you both for those really powerful closing remarks and for your deep partnership. We are grateful for it. As we say at LCV, onward. And I want to say thank you to all of our members and listeners for joining us today for this engaging discussion with Secretary Granholm and Congresswoman Edwards, and with United Steelworkers Anna Fendley and Regenesis's Harold Mitchell, really putting powerful stories and examples of how clean energy can deliver a more just and equitable recovery and society. So onward together. Thank you all for your time today.